We're going to take a look at fractions now, chapter 6.1. And so with your note sheets out, you can take a look. Here's the first question I want you to think about here, looking at this task that's presented. Think about what aspects of the representation might lead a student to the incorrect expression in terms of saying 2/3 is bigger than 3/4, 1/3 is not equal to 1/3, and that this is 1/3. So go ahead again, think about what that is. And as you're looking at the images, I think what comes to mind is that the size is not representative of the value of the fraction, but that's something we'll talk about. So go ahead and take a look at it and think about that, and hopefully by the end you can revisit that and then have an idea how to better answer that question there. The first thing I want you to think about is this situation. Elisa had a ½ liter of juice in a bottle. She drank 3/4 of the juice that was in the bottle. How many liters of juice did she drink? And so you think of calculations and think of ways to solve it, but the way I want to think about it right now is to think about it in terms of a visual. And so here is in red the ½ liter, and then you can see the juice here. Elisa drank 3/4 of that, so she drank this much here. And so how much did she drink, right? The question is how many liters did she drink? Well, the whole thing is 1. She had half. She drank 3/4 of half. And if you break up that full liter into 8 pieces, you can see she ends up drinking 3/8 of a liter based off of this, because this is 3/4 of a half, which is 3/8 of the total. Again, we'll look at some of that in this chapter of fractions. So I want to just show you a visual of that. Of course, go ahead and get your notes down here, what the concept of a fraction, what the term fraction means. And we use that 2 different ways. We use that as a part-to-whole relationship, and then we also have this abstract idea of where we use it as to mean some value, some quantity. And so then looking at the common notation of a fraction, you have multiple ways to write it. Numerator's the top and the denominator on the bottom. And then we have this idea of equivalent parts, right? Means equivalent to some attributes such as length, area, weight, depending on the composition of the whole and appropriate parts. And so we'll talk about what does this mean, equivalent parts, right, as it pertains to fractions. And so looking at this here, what do you think of when you look at the relative amounts represented by the shaded regions and below? So looking at this, you will start to see something comes to mind, right, here. And then so if you look carefully, we see the whole is broken into 8 parts. So what I see here is on this one, I see 5/8 shaded. Same thing, these are equivalent parts where I see there are 8 pieces. And again, this is 5/8. So the fraction represents some portion, right, some piece. Each of these is 5/8, but notice the models are different. So that's why that becomes confusing for students in terms of what they're looking at and why 5/8 could look smaller than some 1/2, depending on how you draw it. But each of these are 5/8. That leads us to the definition for fraction. A fraction is a number that can be represented by an ordered pair of whole numbers, and so important there, an ordered pair of whole numbers, a over b, where b is not equal to 0, right? And so that's what a fraction is, the definition.